Hello and welcome. Today we'll talk about an item that is near and dear to my heart, interviewing, especially the introductory interview, how and what to do and how to make sure that you ace the initial interview so you pass to the second round of interviews, or if there is a technical interview that you definitely landed. Now, let's talk about what some tips and tricks I have learned over the years and what I have seen as being very, very successful. There's a few things that I want to discuss, so let's get through them in brief order. So the first thing is by now you've already submitted your resume and you've landed this interview to give an introduction initially of who you are, what experience you have, and why you'd be a good candidate for this role. So you've basically got the limelight now and you are on the spot. So make sure that you capitalize on this opportunity and give the interviewer what they need to know to make sure that they can move you to the second round or at least shortlist you and choose from the candidates wisely. Now, the first thing is, as your resume will list your experience, oftentimes we will list the chronologically most recent work experience first, and that's not a problem. But try to briefly go from your past experiences to your current experience in a quick, short, and concise manner. For example, if you've had 6 or 7 roles over the last 10 years, undoubtedly you've had lots of experience and varied experience over the last several roles, and explain to the user, or excuse me, the interviewer, how you've gone from being a junior to an intermediary to a senior in your field. Especially if you're interviewing for a technical role such as a software developer, software engineer, other types of engineer, architect, designer. It's very nice for the interviewer to know that you've developed your skills. And it also shows initiative, ambition, and not just waiting and sitting around for things to simply fall in your lap so you can make the next step in your career. Now, when you do this, be brief, as I mentioned earlier, which means the oldest work experience should get the briefest amount of time, with the most focus being on the recent experience. Also, try to highlight what parts of each role or experience would be relevant to the role you're currently interviewing for. That way, it helps the interviewer take some short notes and to help connect your past experience with the current role that they're interviewing for. It also helps tell the interviewer that you've spent some time looking at the job description, reading what the role is asking for, and looking to make sure that you are a match before just blindly sending out a bunch of resumes and hoping that you would land a few interviews. There is nothing worse, and I've been in this scenario several times, to getting a resume, seeing that it looks great, and saying, fantastic. Get the interview scheduled, and on interview day or at interview time, the first 5 minutes, and you're going, nope, this was not what I had in mind. This does not match. There is no reflection of what this person is saying in what the resume states. So be honest. That's a big one. Don't try to embellish your resume too much. I mean, be clear about what you've done and be truthful and honest about your work experience. If you don't have a lot of work experience in a specific area, it's nice for the interviewer to know that you're a beginner in such and such an area. Especially in technology and engineering, there's no way for you to simply know everything. So it is okay for you to admit that, hey, I'm interested in this area and I would like to learn more. However, my skills there are at the beginner or perhaps an intermediary level. Next thing is be brief with the older stuff. I've already mentioned that. But also when you're doing that, if there isn't anything relevant to the current role you're interviewing for, just omit it. There's no reason to spend another 2, 3, a minute, what have you, on very old work experience, particularly older than 6, 7 years in my experience, that isn't relevant. So just make your decision based on that, and make sure that whatever you're giving the interviewer is going to help them to make a good decision on your behalf, and also to make sure that you're not just talking for the sake of talking. Don't ramble on. Be concise. Be brief, but also give the interviewer what they want to hear. Now, if you're also doing a technical interview, as I mentioned, for a software engineering role, software developer role, then you want to highlight some of the tech stacks that you've worked in, some of the problem-solving abilities that you have, how you know how to debug applications, in addition to just developing them, because developing them is easier, which is writing a lot of code. It's syntax and reading the documentation and then looking at bunches of examples and then following along and extrapolating from there. But the ability to debug, I think that outweighs any other ability a software developer can have, because that's when your true problem solving skills shine. Now, the other thing you want to do is capitalize on what you did as the individual. Oftentimes, I've seen during interviews, people are rambling on about my team did this, we did that, we forged this design, we created this new architecture, we developed this app, we launched this cloud service. Great. But what did you specifically do? So make sure that the interview can hear what your role has been. And even if it was just as an individual contributor, knowing what you did will help the interviewer really figure out whether or not you would be a fit for the role. If you're applying, let's say, for a senior software engineer position, and the interviewer doesn't hear from your mouth that you solved some problems, you did some debugging, you did some refactoring, you took some code that was a little bit haphazard and perhaps chaotic and reformulated it, refactored it using design patterns and software architecture principles, then he's going to have a hard time looking at you and saying, this is the candidate that I want to hire. So mix and match, and the match needs to be there. The mix is to show all of the different stacks, technologies, everything that you've worked with, but then there needs to be a match in terms of, okay, senior level developer versus junior level developer or intermediate, and the things that you've done should be relevant to your role level and experience level. So focus on that. Then the next thing is it doesn't have to be just about you. It's also about the company. So initially, although you should wait for the later stages of the interview, but there's nothing wrong with initially showing interest in the company and particularly in the role that you're applying for. So do your homework, look at the 5 W's for the company you are interested in and interviewing with in terms of who is the company, what do they do, when were they formed, and how long they've been around. Particularly if they're a startup, are they funded? What stage of funding are they in? Have they proven themselves in the market? Is there a product offering currently in the market that's gaining traction and growth? These are the type of things you want to look at to make sure that you've done your homework so you understand who the company is that you're applying with. There's nothing worse than having a certain expectation based on assumptions that you have not validated. And once you get hired, you jump into that role only to realize that that wasn't the role or the company that you had hoped it would be. So make sure to do your homework. Plus, asking interesting questions shows the interviewer that you are engaged right from the first step and not just firing your resumes left, right through job sites and through various portals, LinkedIn and what have you. You've actually studied each role and been very selective with why you've applied to those roles. Again, it shows meticulousness, it shows attention to detail, it shows ambition, but it also shows a pragmatic approach to how you interview, and that comes across very, very well, particularly for some of the non-technical skills, the soft skills as we speak about them, that are hard to figure out from your technical experience or even through technical interviews. And do keep in mind that there will be a requirement for soft skills. And as we move further and further into more advanced technologies, more user experience focused roles, and more human computer interaction design, particularly with AI, machine learning, and those types of roles, that you'll need to have a certain level of soft skills for your role to be able to communicate with users, potential research subjects, personas, and whatnot as you speak with clients. And even more so if you're in a startup role, because you'll have to play multiple roles, but also engage with customers, oftentimes do research, testing, perhaps even customer service and support. So it's never a bad thing to show off, or at least to display some of your soft skills during that interview initially to help set a really strong first impression to make sure that you get shortlisted by the interviewer and you land that second interview role. Thank you very much.